So this is Sulyn Gomez. I'm a PhD student at Berkeley, and I've been here working with DPR for the last few years in trying to understand how we can actually better deliver quality in our projects. So just a quick intro in terms of this project. What we're going to see is it's pretty much the workflow for the field quality control and inspection process. So what we are going to see here is the participants, the stakeholders that we include in this workflow is we do have the general contractor who put the work in place, subcontractor who perform the work, along with the GC, and then we have the architect who takes care of all the design, and then a final inspector. Regarding the personas, we're going to see that we have the superintendent on site, and the foreman who supervises the work from craft workers, or architect, an inspector, and the PE from the GC side. So in my current state scenario, something that we're going to see is that a lot of the communication that happens in QC and inspection is passed down to the other person verbally. And so that's an issue that actually we feel that we're struggling actually learning from what's happening because we're not collecting data of what's happening. So when we start to start the workflow, we can see that whenever a work is completed by my craft, what's going to happen is that the foreman is going to take a look and see whether the work is completed. If the work is completed, we're going to see that, okay, that goes to the GC, so the GC can inspect the work. If not, the communication here, whatever went wrong on this stage in which we have the craft worker is actually not documented because it's just verbal communication between them. So what we see is that for the GC, mistakes are actually going unreported. That's more a communication issue because they don't have a specific system in place to document mistakes, defects, and therefore rework. So once the superintendent from the GC has performed the QC for whatever scope of work, what we see is that that information is captured in our system of record, and then we, as an output, we have a document that collects all the issues that have been identified in terms of quality, and that is what we manage as a rolling completion list, which is all the mistakes or the defects that we now have to fix. But that's not the only source of information for this stage. Actually, we do have in parallel the architect conducting a site walk, and as part of that site walk, the architect puts together a site report, and as part of that site report that gets sent to the GC, we see the P having to manually input whatever went wrong or whatever is an observation from the architect. We need to add it to the RCL now. So that's just another pain for us. It's pretty much the workflow as is. It requires manual entry to add observations to RCL so that those can be fixed. And after the P makes sure that everything is well in place and we don't have any more issues on the RCL, what happens is that we now can call the inspector, and the inspector can come to site. When the inspector comes to site, they pretty much rely on the information from code drawings. So this is pretty much a standard on how inspections are conducted by a third party or by the authorities having jurisdiction. And so when the inspection passes, okay, yeah, they go pretty much assignment drawings and say everything is okay, you're good to go. If things go wrong, there's no specific formal documentation when inspection fails. So it's pretty much, again, a verbal communication side to this is a message that we say, hey, it be like this is wrong, this is wrong. So we now need to again add manual input to our rolling completion list. So then my trade partners can fix that, and the superintendent is the one managing that process. So the superintendent has to have again verbal communication to make sure that the foreman fixes whatever is wrong. So what we see from this workflow is that we actually are losing opportunities for learning and improving. And what we're going to see is that that's what I'm trying to fix. That's what I'm suggesting to improve a little bit in a way that this is pretty much my work, my suggestion. How can we actually improve the QC and inspection process in ways that teams, all my project teams, can actually systematically track and assess mistakes and defects now we don't have visibility on that. It's just a lot of research has shown that rework is not tracked, and just the little rework that gets tracked somehow, it's just around 5 to 10% of the project total cost. So it's a huge impact. It's a lot of money, and we actually need to put a little bit more investment on this instance, so that whenever something doesn't go as we expected, we can actually have the data to back up what's going on and take actions based on that. So, and that happens for like small mistakes. It can be something very minor, from using the wrong wrong fastener when I'm just installing drywall, to like, that's just a small thing, and we might say, okay, yeah, that doesn't impact as much in money. But if that wrong fastener was installing all the floors, or in the hall in one floor for all the drywall walls that I have, that's just a lot of time, and that just becomes huge in money. So we want to improve the QC process in ways that we can systematically improve, so that QC and inspection facilitates learning. We want our GCs or companies in general to actually become learning organizations. And the only way to do that is seeing what's not going as well. In my future scenario, what we see is we are actually suggesting the use of ACC to fix some of the problems that we have. First is that we are going to have, if we're able to use ACC to do our QC and inspection, we're actually going to have just one single form to conduct quality control. So, and just let me take a step back on this. There are a couple of considerations that I want you to know, that, okay, this is not always going to work, but it's going to work under these conditions. So the assumptions I'm making is that the contractual agreement between the GC and the trade contractors is in place, so that the subcontractor is going to use the system, the quality control system that the GC determines as hey, this is what we're going to use, so that we're all aligned on that. And then all parties agree on measurable criteria. So that's key when it comes to quality. Sometimes we have different criteria to assess what's good and what's not. So we need to come to an alignment. As long as we are all aligned on what success means and what our measurable criteria is, we can actually have this well developed on site. So first is that we're going to use ACC to conduct our QC. So ACC does allow you to manage forms for quality. And so you can develop the form in the format that you need it. And also you can have as many contributors as needed. So if the idea is that we're going to have a foreman who's going to make sure that work is completed as expected. And then we are all going to go and sign in on the same form. So we're all signing into the same measurable acceptance criteria, into the same form, that this is, if I'm looking at the wall, we all have the same criteria, and we're saying that the wall is as expected. So we have now one single form to conduct quality, and we have all of our stakeholders involved and using the same criteria to assess this. So ACC, what's nice about this is that ACC also can give you the information in terms of, okay, now when you create a form and where you are assessing your form, you can actually, when something is not right, you can directly input the issues in there. So you can have a log of issues as well. You have all the issues that you have documented and need to be fixed into one place. So all our subcontractor Ps, again, all the stakeholders have visibility in terms of what issues need to be fixed. And we have one system to track and manage mistakes. So again, we have one system to report, one system to track and manage how things are going. And then when we have the final inspector, if everything looks good, this P is going to come to the inspector again. And then the inspector is going to come. There's only so much to do in terms of what the inspector is going to do and what system they can use, because it's just a third party and it's harder for us to get them under the same contract. But what we can do is we can have a P shadowing this inspector. So pretty much being with him and okay, what's if everything looks good, we again go and sign our drawings on site. That means we're good to go. And if not, we have the P shadowing this inspector, and at the same time, while the inspector is saying whatever is wrong, if something needs to be fixed, our P is actually on site, just inputting issues that we need into ACC, and we just have immediate feedback whenever something is wrong. So, and every stakeholder who is analyzing the issues log have the same visibility in terms of what is going well and what is not. And so in this way, we can actually finally have something to track whenever things don't go as planned. And we can have historic record of where we need to improve. And that just gives us also visibility in terms of our criteria for success. And at some point, we can analyze any deviation or any misalignment on expectations, because we all are signing on the same form saying, this is what we agree on, this is what we are receiving. And by having all of them being contributors in the same analysis, it's just making the process flow much faster, and we don't have to circle us back and go back and forward between people here. So this is my future state scenario. I don't have numbers for it, but I know it works well. I want to know that. So I want to believe that. And what we're doing with DPR is we're just trying, we started testing ACC on different sites. And as far as I've seen, it seems to have a lot of capabilities that we can actually take advantage. And now I open the room for questions.
Well done. Let's start with a round of applause. Great job, Sulyn. I will pick on Jared only because ACC was mentioned so many times. See if you had any thoughts, or if it's hearing similar sentiments from customers, or maybe anything that is not seen here that should be.
No, everything seems to make sense to me. But to be clear, Sulyn, this, like, you haven't actually tested this yet, right? Like, so you sort of have implicit agreement that this could be a solution that works, but you don't have any feedback from testing the system yet. Is that correct?
So that's part what we're doing with project teams. So I'm working with a project here in South San Francisco, and we're just putting together the form templates that we're going to be using to assess work. So we're in very early stages of development here.
Yeah. No, it all looks good to me. I am curious about the point in the process where you have the project engineer shadowing the inspector. I'd be kind of curious how that goes. But the system sounds like it makes sense to me, and that this is a perfectly feasible solution to what was a incredibly cumbersome problem that you outlined at the top.
So I would say for this stage, or for this specific case, when we have inspector and PEs, sometimes what we may have on site is that our inspector may come to site and just do their inspection and then let you know when things go wrong and well. What we would like to know what we would like to see in this case is that we can actually, and that may be an assumption for my system as well, that we actually have the inspector on board with us all the time in terms of understanding the criteria for success, what quality means for the work that we're putting in place. And so that we also have a good relationship with the inspector in ways that they can, when they walk the site, they can walk the site with a PE or an intern or someone who is there who can actually understand what the inspector's assessment criteria is.
Yeah.
Yep. And we do need to move on for time, but I think great stuff here. And another maybe assumption in there as well would be that the trade contractor and the architect don't really care about having their own copy of the quality control data, which is a fair assumption. They may not care, but if they did, then it would be, okay, how do we get it into their system too? Which gets real tricky. But moving on, the great presentation, Sulyn.